the you that is you, the self, the mind, through the conscious, unconscious, and subconscious portion, all accept his brilliance. If a part of him accepts brilliance and the other part doesn't, depending, and we do suggest this word depending applies here, depending on the degree to which the brilliance permeates the totality of the self, as opposed to the perspective of less than, then the degree to which the perspective of brilliance permeates the totality of the self will be the degree to which his brilliance will be perceived by others. What we mean by this is this. If one half of Johnny saw himself as brilliant, then one half of his friends would perceive him as brilliant, the other half would not. If 70% of Johnny saw himself as brilliant, then 70% of his relationships would perceive his brilliance, the rest would not. And if only 10% of him perceived as brilliance, then 10% of his friends, acquaintances, family, etc., relationships surrounding him would also perceive his brilliance, the remainder would not. So there is a direct relationship between the knowing of the self and the reality in which you exist. To Johnny, if half of his friends perceive him as brilliant and the other half do not, he questions and doubts his brilliance. He still looks to others to reflect to him his own brilliance. And because half do not, he therefore does not observe half of himself. And because he does not observe half of himself, he creates a reality in which he is accepted and appreciated for his brilliance half the time, and the other half he's not. That may be in the form of teachers, peers, students, parents, family, friends, regardless. Regardless of the level of relationship, half of all of existence surrounding him would appreciate his brilliance, half would not. Why? Because he is creating that very reality by what exists within himself, about himself. Now, notice the trend here, dear friends. The trend is that that which is within you is also that which is reflected to you, that which you create, that which is the reality in which you exist. If you recall the defining statements we've given to mankind, the defining statement, there's one defining statement that states, that which you are is that which I am, and that which I am is that which you are, which shows a continuity of interaction and interrelationship between the self and all of existence surrounding the self. This statement applies to the nature of reality quite sufficiently, we assure you. For in truth, using Johnny as the example, Johnny sees himself as brilliant only half the time, and so does, therefore, the existence that surrounds him reflect that to him. And when he sees himself as brilliant 100% of the time, so too will existence reflect that to him. And if he perceives himself as less than, then so too will the reality surrounding him reflect it to him. And if he perceives himself as greater than, so too will the reality surrounding him reflect that to him. Now, it has been said that no one individual is 100% less than or 100% greater than. Because if they were, they would be surrounded only by individuals that would either reflect their lesser thanness or their greater thanness. And that's true. There are degrees, as we did say, combinations, permutations of different factors, different belief structures, each one intertwining with the other, each one then forming a whole which creates the reality in which you exist. But that whole comes from you. You choose it. You, dear friends, make the choices that reflect the whole. Johnny chose to see himself as brilliant only half the time. He could have chosen differently. He could have observed himself sufficiently to observe his brilliance all of the time. But he chose not to. Why? Because of other belief structures at play, each one intertwining with his brilliance. But he still chose it regardless. The reason is unimportant. What is important is that he chose it. His choice. And as a result, therefore, his choices then reflect, recreate, create for him a reality that reflects the choices he's made. So from the perspective of reality and the nature of reality then, you are the creator, and your choices create that which you choose to create. Which is why the fourth session was done prior to the third session. That you could understand choice prior to understanding creation. If we had suggested to you previously that you were creators, we would have had to do so without the perspective of choice, for we had not yet discussed the perspective of choice. But by having discussed the perspective of choice prior to the perspective of creator, we can then incorporate the perspective of choice to the perspective of creator and bring about to you a greater awareness of how you create. Interesting how our choices worked out very well, isn't it? And so, for those of you listening to these particular series of audio recordings, we assure you the numbers will be proper, but they were done in different orders. Choice is necessary. Choice is the basis of your creation. True imagination gives you potential, gives you possibilities and probabilities, opens you to every permutation possible. That's what imagination does. Choice chooses the opportunities and creates. And the mind uses choice to apply to the existence that which you create. The mind, the conscious portion of the mind, the unconscious and the subconscious, all working together, manifest your choices. So, let's view it from this perspective. As creators, you choose to extend, to create wealth into your existence. That is the will that is applied through the you that is you. You want wealth. You let imagination perceive in every direction what it means to be wealth. Then you choose to experience wealth. The choice must be made. Then the mind, the subconscious, the conscious, and the unconscious portion of the mind, then views this as a direction and begins to create circumstances, opportunities, moments of existence in which more choice can be applied that reflects wealth. But if the you that is you has chosen the direction of wealth, and imagination has therefore given the possibilities and probabilities and choices made to experience wealth, and the mind then gives you the opportunities, but then a portion of the self is not interested in it, what occurs is when the opportunity presents itself, the choice is not made to experience wealth.